Warm welcome to the audience. The topic of my presentation is Nuances in the Diagnosis of COVID-19. I'm Godfred Menezes, Associate Professor at RAC Medical and Health Sciences University. The presentation will include review, introduction, diagnostics, when to collect samples, different molecular antigen antibody tests and other new tests, interpretation of results, and take-home message. Few questions to ponder upon. Is severity or death toll related to SARS-CoV-2 virus strain? What are the hallmark of finding in complete blood count? What are the requirements for specimen packaging? And why nasopharyngeal swab is the preferred one? And what are the biosafety level requirements for PCR reactions? What are the test indications for carrying out quantitative reverse transcription PCR? Interpretations of confirmatory tests along with the other complementary tests. Why antibody detection tests are not reliable? What is RT-LAMP? And next generation sequencing in COVID-19 diagnosis. COVID-19, coronavirus disease 2019, is a kind of viral pneumonia which is caused by SARS-CoV-2, severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. The virus contains different proteins like envelope, spike, membrane, and nucleocapsid protein. ACE2 is the host receptor for this SARS-CoV-2 virus, and viral spike protein interacts with the host cells and gains access into the cells. A lot has happened since December 2019 when China reported this mystery illness. And within a month, it was possible to get the whole genome sequencing done, and hence there was possibility of molecular test for COVID-19. Within 3 months, this particular virus managed to turn into a pandemic, COVID-19 global pandemic. So we do believe that this is a zoonotic infection, mainly because of genomic similarity between the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, isolated from bat and pangolin, and thereafter spilled over to humans. The presentation, disease duration, and immune response doesn't remain classical. It varies from person to person, mainly because of this being an animal virus trying to adapt itself in humans. Certain facts about SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. Relapse in virus shedding and new clinical symptoms have been documented, and there also have been super spreaders where index case could transmit infection to up to 12 cases. And problem seems to be transmission of infection from asymptomatic individuals. The reported incubation time varies between 3 to 12 days, and hence the quarantine period of 14 days has been designed. By now, we are aware that there are multiple strains of SARS-CoV-2 in circulation all over the globe. And pathogenesis is mainly because it is virus-triggered autoreactive T cells and cytokine storm. But the good news is almost up to 80% of the cases recover without without requiring any special treatment. Yes, so the numbers have been ever increasing. In UAE, the situation is not that bad, mainly because of stringent guidelines by the government, and it is followed quite well by the population here. And also, the population is not that great. It's not so huge compared to other countries in UAE. There's a beautiful initiative by GSAID where they share, where there's a rapid sharing of data from all influenza viruses and coronavirus. This really helps. And daily death tolls are falling in many countries. That is a good news, definitely. A number of cases or severity or the death toll is not due to viral strains. Usually, it's mainly because of sanitization measures, how different countries have followed sanitization measures, or how they could tackle lockdown in different countries. Yeah, so among the strains, the G clade seems to be the most common one or the largest one. Though there is a variability in the strains, this does not impact with the PCR detection. Among the symptoms, fever, dry cough, and fatigue seems to be the most common symptoms, but still it will be varying between individuals. So there are variable clinical presentations, and no single symptom or set of symptoms can reliably diagnose or exclude COVID-19 infection. So that seems to be problem in clinical diagnosis. So what is a confirmed case? So a case which has been confirmed by real-time PCR for COVID-19, or if the virus isolation was possible for COVID-19, then it could be termed as confirmed case. Whereas suspected case is the one which is with fever and defined respiratory symptoms within 14 days of being in close contact with the confirmed case, or you can call it as a first level exposure. If you have to explain COVID-19 in three simple words, it is a multi-system inflammatory syndrome. Hence, it requires multidisciplinary approach with gold standard tests like RT-PCR being the cornerstone of diagnosis. Different public screening options have been tried out, like in case of UAE, laser-based DPI, diffractive phase interferometry technology, which will detect increase or decrease in the blood cells. And so it could be one of the screening options, which to be confirmed by the confirmatory test according to the government guidelines. Whereas CT scan, we may find the classical sign of pneumonia, which is ground glass opacity for COVID-19, but it need not be there always. So no finding can completely rule in or rule out the possibility of COVID. There seems to be a problem in the diagnosis. Yeah, elevated interleukin-6 and procalcitonin, when you find, it is an indication of increased severity of the disease. And in case of hallmark or for complete blood count in COVID-19, lymphocyte cytopenia is the most important one. Besides that, you can see elevated CRP, thrombocytopenia, and leukopenia. Less commonly, elevations such as in liver enzymes, ALT, AST, others like CK and D dimer have been documented, and miscellaneous ones are like elevated interleukin-6, creatine and kinase, troponin, and lactate dehydrogenase are also quite important. But we should remember that a patient need not have all of these laboratory values to be termed as infected or positive for COVID-19. So the medical personnel or laboratory personnel who are involved in specimen collection, processing samples, all of them have to be very careful to avoid getting infected. So they have to follow complete PPE, personal protective equipment measures. Person while collecting sample may sneeze or cough, so that could generate aerosols, and hence the staff or the laboratory personnel should always follow these guidelines. Besides PCR and antibody, there could be point of care test, which is mostly antigen based test, and NGS and other novel diagnostic tests. In the initial period, up to 7 days, which is called as window period because there are no antibodies detected, which are not yet formed, PCR and other antigen detection tests could be positive. So on the 7th day, that is after a week of being contacted with the infection, IgM becomes detectable, which may remain for up to 21 days. And in case of the second antibody, the second neutralizing antibody, the IgG production starts on the 14th day, and it will last for quite a long time. So IgG remains in blood and provides long-term immunity, but it is not yet known how long it will last. It is not yet clear. Yeah, so if you go for 15th day, there is a very good chance of more than one test being positive, helping you to diagnose the infection. Regarding the RNA test, PCR test, it could be positive up to 28 days, where the CT values goes on increasing over the time. Yeah, so among the swabs, a single nasopharyngeal swab is the preferred one if over the oropharyngeal swab. If you have collected just one swab, then it is always nasopharyngeal swab, provided it is in the initial phase of the infection. Yeah, so while you're collecting this sample, the swab should be in place for 10 seconds while being twirled at least 3 times. It is painful for the person from whom you're collecting, but still this guideline has to be followed. And if 2 swabs are collected, nasopharyngeal as well as oropharyngeal swab is collected, this can be aliquoted in a single viral transport medium. And among the swabs, the flock swabs are the most preferred swabs. And in severe cases or in later on stage of the infection, lower respiratory tract samples also could be included, and they are preferred. In viral transport medium, there is gentamicin, which is antibacterial, and there is amphotericin B, which is antifungal. So we do not want bacteria and fungi contaminating the virus transport medium. So this makes sure that it remains suitable only for the viral RNA to be there. Regarding specimen packaging, it should be containing the 3 layers as suggested by CDC, making it sure that it is spill proof as well as is not going to be infectious for others, while if at all there is a spillage of the sample. Yeah, so the current PCR is called a single-step QRT-PCR. As in a single step, you start from RNA, and there is a transcription of RNA into cDNA by using the enzyme reverse transcriptase, and then cDNA is used as a template for qPCR reaction. So it is quantitative reverse transcription PCR, or you can call it as real-time reverse transcription PCR. So here you can see the image of a classical PCR lab, which is meant for QRT PCR in case of COVID-19. So even class 2 biosafety level is enough for QRT PCR for COVID-19 detection. Whereas if you have to grow the virus, if you have to do cell culture of this virus, then you do need class 3 biosafety level. Among the tests for COVID-19, it can be classified as a direct test or indirect test, or you can call it a screening test or confirmatory test. The direct tests are the ones which will detect RNA or antigen, and indirect tests are the ones which will detect antibody or other markers. Whereas screening test is the one which is screening antigen or antibody. There are very good antigen tests available, but it depends on the local regulating authorities to approve those tests. And confirmatory test is naturally only the QRT PCR as of now. And the most common PCR platform in low and middle income countries happens to be the Gene Expert platform, which is a very user-friendly technique or a platform, and it's economical as well. Yeah. So the indications for carrying out QRT PCR are for confirming suspected cases, for deciding on release of confirmed patients from quarantine, screening of asymptomatic individuals in close contact with confirmed case who are first-level exposures, or differential diagnosis of cases with unknown respiratory syndromes. Yeah. Coming to the target gene in RT-PCR protocols, as of now, we have seen various kits in the market, and mostly the kit which is targeting 2 or more genes are preferred. And what we have seen of late is mostly it is C gene kit which is targeting E, RDRP, and N, is the mostly used, but it depends on countries as well. Yeah, so QRT-PCR is a gold standard test, mainly because of amplification and analysis are done simultaneously, whereas other tests may not be as reliable as this one. And regarding the target genes, there should be structural as well as accessory genes, a pool of them, at least 2 or 3 of them together. So depending on CDC and WHO recommendation, we have seen that E, RDRP, and N genes are the most common ones which are targeted. And whenever there is a low CT value, it indicates a high viral load. Okay, and that could be used as an indication of transmissibility. So what are CT values? It is an intersection between an amplification curve and a threshold line. So it is a relative measure of the concentration of target in the PCR reaction. Okay, so we cannot say it is an indication of viral load, but it is mostly a relative measure of the concentration of the target. Patients with the high CT values, that is later on in the infection, not in the initial phase, later on, the CT values more than 35 can be considered non-infectious. Okay, so the cutoff value is very important, and we should seriously consider while reporting. To begin with, the CT values could be around 20, and it increases to 25, 30, and then in the 3rd week or 4th week, it may go up to 35 or more. For cheaper alternatives, pooling of samples have been tried in different setups, but we have to be very careful while reporting, because it has to be individually repeated if the pool turns positive, and there should not be any scope for false positives or false negatives. Yeah, so values close to cutoff values, which is interpreting for false positive and false negative, should be done cautiously. And whenever there is positive, it's always better it is retested using a fresh sample. Regarding antibodies, among the antibodies targeted, the two most important ones are antibodies against spike proteins and nucleic acid proteins. So these tests are based on different principles like optical density based, flow cytometry, or bioluminescence. So if it is IgM along with IgG or only IgM, it reveals active infection, whereas if you detect only IgG, it could be missed previous infection if the RT-PCR was not done at the right time. So presence of antibodies the question is, does it confer immunity, and if so, for how long? So it still remains a question whether antibodies, whether it is an indication of conferring immunity, and if so, for how long it will confer immunity. Yeah, so as the COVID-19 pandemic continues, there's growing demand for point-of-care tests, rapid point-of-care tests. And these antibody tests could be used for surveillance or to identify susceptible individuals, or it could be used by public health measures, including return to work protocols and social segregation of susceptible individuals. So the antibody detection tests have not been reliable for various reasons, such as sometimes IgG seroconversion could happen before IgM. So it varies. So seroconversion is not that classical or it's not very definite. So that's the reason why antibody detection tests cannot be used for confirmation or even for screening. It can be just a complementary test. Yeah, so regarding interpretation, when you compare between PCR, IgG, and IgM, if only PCR is positive, the patient may be in the window period, the first 7 days of the infection. And if all three are positive, PCR, IgM, and IgG, it's possible that patient is in the active phase of infection. And if only IgG is positive, it could be past infection. That means the previous infection, which would have got missed because the patient did not get tested by PCR. And if only IgM positive or only IgG positive, in that case, it is possible that PCR result may be false negative, antibody test could be false positive. So this has to be taken care of. False positivity and false negativity has to be taken care of, and you should not hesitate to repeat the test to confirm. Yeah. So RT-LAMP, it is the reverse transcription loop-mediated isothermal amplification. This seems to be a very good test, mainly because it can replace QRT-PCR, since it is as sensitive as QRT-PCR, and it's quite an economical test. Cost of the reagent is reduced tenfold, and it is much faster than the real-time PCR. Real-time PCR may take up to 6 hours for processing, whereas this one may take just within half an hour you may get the results. So this test could be a test to replace QRT-PCR if it is taken seriously and interpreted seriously. Regarding the antigen test, there are reliable antigen tests available, but depends on local regulating authorities to approve these tests. Yeah, so in such cases, if a rapid antigen test is used, and if it is negative, but if the patient is symptomatic, then it's always preferable to repeat the test for RT-PCR. Regarding next generation sequencing, where we detect newer mutated viruses, sequencing by synthesis is possible, but this seems to be quite expensive. But then there is a newer method which is called as Oxford nanopore technology, where it reads the long read sequencing. This happens to be a small compact size equipment, and you can call it as point of care of test as well. And recently, CRISPR-based assays have been introduced, and CRISPR methods for detecting viral RNA, where CRISPR-associated enzymes are able to target and cut viral RNA sequences. Take-home message: COVID-19 diagnostics is still uncertainty, and it remains a problem in diagnosis. And there is urgent need for accurate and rapid differential diagnosis, point of care of tests for SARS-CoV-2 infection. And presence of antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, whether it correlates with immunity to the virus is a question which still remains. And PCR performance is quite robust based on different genes, where we target at least 2 or more than 2 genes, and hence false results are minimized. In mild cases, virus disappears early, so even in asymptomatic cases, the virus load may be less, so we have to make sure that we do not miss on such cases. And besides QRT-PCR results, we should also correlate it with the clinical findings. And virus, when it is found in the blood, it is very well correlated with the severity of the infection. And the key strategy, finally, to save lives and to protect livelihoods remains testing, tracking, and treating. This has to continue. We should not turn complacent, and the good work should continue. So I leave you with the beautiful landmark of Ras Al Khaimah. This is Jabal Jais. So this has been a war on the face of a common enemy. And so hats off to all the frontline healthcare workers. So we could just stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.